I'd like to call the work session to order for December 9th, 2024. Roll call, all here? All good. We have two items on the agenda tonight. I'd like to remind council staff will be pausing every so often to answer any questions. First item up is the presiding judge recommendation on specialty courts. Go ahead, Judge, you're on.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council. My name is Manuel Delgado. I'm the presiding judge of the Goodyear Municipal Court. This is Crystal Whalen. She is the court administrator. So pursuant to my performance objectives, council requested an evaluation and recommendation related to the creation of the specialty courts. So this recommendation is being provided to council for their consideration and direction. So to start with, problem-solving courts, also known as specialty courts, are specialized dockets that seek to address underlying mental or substance abuse disorders that may contribute to the commission of certain criminal offenses by providing treatment rather than punishment. So the most common types of problem-solving courts are drug treatment, mental health, veterans treatment courts, although there's other specialty courts that vary by state or county. So through these problem-solving courts, judges, prosecutors, defense attorneys, mental health providers, and community partners collaborate to provide treatment as an alternative to possibly being convicted of a criminal offense that could result in incarceration. So just by way of background, back in August 2021, the Goodyear Municipal Court sought to establish a community court to intentionally take a holistic approach to addressing the needs of specific targeted defendants who were either veterans, homeless, or had mental health issues. So council approved Paul Thomas as the vendor or consultant to assist the court with the implementation of the community court. In September 2022, the project was named the Problem Solving Court. So a steering committee was formed, discussions, meetings, and presentations were held related to the creation of that project. Now, the steering committee and the consultant took numerous preliminary steps towards the implementation of the project. Those steps are noted in the review and assessment report that was prepared by the consultant, which was attached to the council action report, and those are on pages 2 and 3. So in February of 2023, the project was suspended due to the transitioning of the court's presiding judge. And as a result of that transition, the steering committee was never formally adopted. In October of 2023, I was hired as a presiding judge. And at that point, council requested that as part of my performance objectives, an evaluation and recommendation related to the reactivation of that problem-solving court project. So in March, I asked the consultant to conduct a review and assessment and provide the court with a recommendation regarding that project. And in June, Mr. Thomas completed the review, assessment, and recommendation. So again, excuse me, that review and assessment report was attached to the council action report. I got allergies just like everybody else. Killing me right now. So, based on the report and my personal evaluation, it's my opinion that we should suspend the implementation of the problem-solving court until the number of potential targeted groups increases to a level justifying its implementation. So, essentially, the reasons for the suspension are that our current numbers of potential defendants don't justify the investment of resources and cost, and the court's referral process and the resources that are available through the city of Goodyear are sufficient to meet the needs of the targeted defendants at this time. So specifically about the number of defendants at the initiation of the project, it was estimated that roughly 20 cases is a rolling number of cases coming in and being resolved would be the active caseload. And that's also on your review and assessment on page 7 and 8, the report. This number included a combination of cases from among all the targeted groups, and the consultant solicited services based on that estimate of an active caseload. So when we talk about an active caseload, we're talking about being able to look at the docket at any given point and having at least 20 cases that are active. So the consultant sent out 11 letters to potential service agencies seeking their involvement with the project without a single response. And it was suspected that that lack of response was due to the low numbers of potential defendants the court would be servicing. The consultant also reached out to the Veterans Administration to assign a Veterans Outreach representative to coordinate the veterans benefits. Again, concerns were raised regarding the willingness to commit a representative to our court due to the low number of potential cases. So it's important to reiterate that that lack of support was based on that combined number of targeted groups, and it's the court's opinion that no one individual targeted group would sustain that 20-case load that was suggested when we were soliciting services. As an aside, the court has subsequently learned that the best practice is actually not to combine groups, but to have groups separated by that target. So a decision to implement the problem-solving court project would require an amendment to the budget. At minimum, the project would require a navigator, approximately $62,000, a public defender, approximately $32,000, which would be part-time, an additional prosecutor, approximately $120,000. And as you are aware, the court acquired a judicial officer with extensive specialty court experience, so that would not be an additional cost. In terms of the services that we already have, currently between the court's referral process and the City of Goodyear's resources, services are being provided to address the needs of these targeted groups. So they are being recognized and addressed. So the court currently has an IGA with the City of Glendale, which refers defendants to the West Valley Regional Court who elect to participate in the Veterans Court. The court also participates in the Veterans Standout Court. Defendants who do exhibit signs of mental incompetency are referred for an examination of competency. Now, while the process isn't a mental health treatment program or a specialty court, many of these defendants are case managed, and the process reestablishes contact with their case managers and results in defendants getting back on medication and reconnected to their services. And you should know as well, as a practice of mine and the other judge that is there, if we do get an inkling that there is a mental health issue, we will appoint a CA in the interest of justice, no cost, so that they can navigate through the process. And they're very good about, if those individuals do have case managers, getting them connected back to those case managers. And the court is also active in the Maricopa County Regional Homeless Court. So the city currently has 2 support programs addressing those 2 targeted groups. The City of Goodyear's Police Department, as you're aware, has a homeless outreach team, the HOT team, and the team is trained in dealing with homeless circumstances and connects individuals to services. And the City of Goodyear Fire Department Crisis Intervention Team is trained to respond to crises involving mental health. So the team takes part in crisis intervention, connects individuals to services, and then addresses potential situations involving involuntary commitments. So the recommendation is, between the court's referrals and the city's program, the city is currently addressing the targeted population and taking into consideration the low number of potential targeted individuals and the lack of interest from the necessary agencies to commit resources to this project. It's the court's recommendation that we should suspend the establishment of the specialized courts until that number of targeted groups increases. I did deviate from the report and recommendation a bit here. I think that we need to continue to monitor this. We're not going to stop growing. We're going to continue to grow. So it was recommended that we implement an individual committee, but I am recommending that the court use its current justice group that meets quarterly and to continue to evaluate that need for that specialty court as part of their standing agenda. So right now, we have a representative from the prosecutor's office, the police department, the court administrator, myself, And I think that that is sufficient at this time. We can go ahead and monitor that. And we would definitely not be opposed to adding an individual from the City of Quality of Life group. They seem to be involved in that area, so if that would be helpful to get their opinion as well. But at this point, I don't believe a formal committee is necessary.
Okay, thank you. With that, open it up for discussion. Who's up? Councilmember Gillis?
I am so thankful that you did all this because this was important to us, as you know. I'm especially concerned about the mental health because of what I saw when I talked to you about the ride-alongs that I did and the washes that we got cleared with the homeless and all the drugs that I saw out there. So, and I realized in doing that there was a lot of mental health that was involved. And we have one of the best homeless outreach teams. We really do, as I'm sure you have seen.
Right.
And those guys are awesome, and they do an awesome job, and they're very considerate and caring when they go out and talk to these people, much more than I have patience for, I have to tell you. But they're wonderful, and the drugs concerned me. So that's my main thing, is that the mental health that we have going on, because a lot of people do not understand the mental health. They just think, oh, they're on drugs, no big deal. Well, sometimes the drugs helps the mental health. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Is how they look at it, correct?
Correct.
So I'm very, very thankful that you looked into this more, and I agree with you. I mean, why spend the money if we don't need it, as long as we are addressing the issues? The veterans is a given. We have to take care of our veterans. That's all there is to it. So in doing this, what you're saying is that we aren't negating anything. We're not, as far as veterans and stuff. We are still giving them the time and the energy that we need, or that they need to get all this taken care of if they need something?
Absolutely, and they're getting referred over to with the IGA to the Glendale
Yes.
court.
Yes.
Crystal has some numbers, if you want to hear numbers, but
I would
yes,
like
they're
to hear
gonna-
the numbers. Yes.
We have the second highest court participation right behind Glendale in that program. So we found
Veterans.
Correct.
Okay.
So we found it to be very successful and a high graduation rate as well. So we're finding that our veterans that we're referring, we've had maybe 2 that have voluntarily taken themselves out of the program.
Okay.
And we referred 25 case referrals with 17 graduations last fiscal
Awesome.
year.
That's awesome.
And we have had 9 case referrals this fiscal year with 1 graduation and 8 active as of November 7th.
Okay, that's awesome. Because to me, they're first on the list. They served their country. They're first on the list. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate all the time you put into this. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Go ahead, Sherry.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate the recommendation. I think it's very well thought out, you know, taking into consideration the size we are and the growth, and then to monitor it. I agree with Councilmember Gillis, 100% with the veterans. I know that program is very well run in Glendale. And I do have a question about that. Do they take into account, do they give mental health treatment through the VA? Because sometimes you're going to have a mental health and a veteran with post-traumatic stress syndrome. Do they take into consideration both of those?
My understanding is those services are holistic, right? So whatever it is that individual is lacking, they're getting the resources for them.
Perfect. And then my other question is about the, you showed the 4 quadrants of different services that we have. I think they're all great except for that one for mental health, because like you explained that Maricopa County Superior Court is not a treatment court. It doesn't give any treatment. And I know we don't have enough to do something our own. Is there any way that we could go do an IGA with Glendale's mental health? Do they do any sort of treatment? Would that be a possibility?
They have a mental health court program. I would have to investigate that to see if they would be open
Okay.
to allowing us to send mental health defendants to that court.
Because my friends on the council, when they go to the Maricopa County, there's one day that's the city day, and all the cities are there, all of them. And it's really, you see 2 to 3 doctors who say you're either competent or not competent, or you need to go through restoration, which can be very expensive to restore someone. And it's not a competency as a health care. It's a competency of, do you know who the prosecutor is? Do you know who the judge is? And do you know who your defense attorney is and what you're charged with? It's very limited. It's being able to pare it back. And it doesn't really I see in my practice, we see the same people going over and over and over, and I don't know if your court has the same, I want to say frequent flyers, but if we get to the point that we're getting some of these frequent flyers, and oftentimes they're homeless or veterans, that if there's a service there that we could IGA without reinventing the wheel, if we could look into that, I think that would be great.
I absolutely will look into that for you, and I actually ran the mental health court there.
I thought you'd be
Okay,
familiar. I wasn't sure if it was
so
there when you started or when you, if they're still doing it like you did it.
They're
or-
still doing it, yeah.
So if you could like use your contacts over there and see if it's
Sure.
something, maybe, I think that would help our people. And it's also easier to get to Glendale than it is to get downtown. They get lost there. So I appreciate everything you guys have done and all the hard work, turning our court around. So my deepest thanks for getting it all going and getting it up and running. And I know we kind of gave you a bit of a quandary when you came, so we appreciate all your hard work, Judge. And you too, Crystal, for getting it up and running, and your staff, so thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Stipp?
Thank you. Really not much to add other than a show of gratitude for everything that you've done. Do we know what the number of mental health cases are?
I sure do. Thank you for the question, Councilmember Stipp. This fiscal year, we have, again, this is as of November 7th when I ran the data. 4 cases were referred to mental health court this fiscal year. Last fiscal year, we had 16 cases referred, with only 5 that resulted in an actual competency pre-screen. Fiscal year 23, we had 9 cases. The year prior to that was 4 cases, and fiscal year 21, we had 1.
Yeah, so the numbers are fairly small, so,
Yes, and we have had only this year 2 full Rule 11 pre-screens that are actually going past. So there's a pre-screen process, and if the case needs to progress further for further competency review, which can lead to the scenarios Councilmember Loretano mentioned, we have 2 cases in mental health full transfer right now. So we actually transfer the case fully over to the Maricopa County Superior Court.
so I think getting that information about, A, Glendale's willingness to participate, B, does it make sense? I think providing that information to the council before next year's update might be helpful. But everything so far has, really, it's been great for us. You're one of those departments that we wish didn't have to exist.
Sure.
We wish we didn't have to run people through court. But unfortunately, that's the world we live in. So if we're going to have it, let's do it right. And I appreciate all the efforts that both of you have put forward. And I look forward, well, I don't know if I look forward to, but it'll be interesting to watch from the sidelines. So thank you.
Vice Mayor Kano?
I know that when we hired you, making an evaluation of the specialty courts was really important to us because we wanted to make sure that the people coming through got the service that they need for their particular situation. So you've done a great analysis, and as I mentioned to you before this meeting, it's so good to hear that the work that we're doing up front with our teams from police and fire are really making an impact. And I think we've all known that they do, but your report and the consultant, really confirmed how effective that they've been to divert people from the system. So that's great to hear. Appreciate you being, very fiscally conservative and just going to keep an eye on it. I like the idea of considering Glendale for those few cases that we have. And I also wanted to comment that committee, that it's an informal committee that you have with all those various stakeholders, including police and things. I think that's a really good idea, just to keep the lines of communication open for sure. Thank you.
Councilmember Campbell?
Thank you. Judge, I'm sure you're aware that our library has a VA counselor once a month that comes and spends all day in the library offering all the services that the VA will give to any veteran. And we also do a veterans program once a month in addition to that. So we're really active on that end, trying to get the information out to people who may need the mental health. And the VA has over 1,200 locations where veterans in our county can get help. and anyone that's eligible for it, they'll get it if they're eligible for the VA services. Maybe who's not getting the services are those that fall through the crack. They've had a dishonorable discharge, or they didn't serve enough time in the military to get the VA benefits. So those may be the ones that need extra assistance to it. But I do know that we're very proactive as far as trying to get the information out to VA, how many veterans we have in our city and how important it is that we share what they can do for them, and it has been very productive. We have a library staff member that is assigned just to the veterans, and they've done just a wonderful job, really. I'm not surprised that you told us that we don't need the specialty court yet, because we really don't have that big of a homeless count. We do have a homeless count, but we don't have that large of a homeless count. And I have volunteered for the last 6 years at the Glendale Stand-Up. I've seen it firsthand, and it's a lot of fun. In fact, the first time I went, I found out our judge was not going. He went the next time, but he used to not go and share that duty because we needed to have judges that would actually come in on their time and be there for the court so that they could get those cases cleared out as quickly as they could. So what Glendale's doing is amazing, and I'm so glad we're a part of it. And thank you for all you do, and I do like you coming and telling us we don't need the courts. But I know you'll let us know when the time comes. We
I
just
will let
don't
you
need to
know.
press the panic button now. We know you'll keep on top of it, and you'll let us know when it's appropriate. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Hampton?
Yeah, not much more to add, but thank you for doing your due diligence to go through and see that we don't need it right now, but you'll let us know in the future. So thank you to you and your team.
Thank you, sir.
Crystal,
Yes.
I was remiss. I want to say thank you to you, too. I'm thanking the judge and giving him all the credit because I love the guy. But I want to say thank you to you because you did a lot before we had Judge, who was wonderful, but you did a lot.
Thank you so
And
much.
I want to say that we've seen that, and I thank you a lot for that because I know you've helped with a lot of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you
She
so much.
still does a lot.
Well, being last, it's not a whole lot to add, except to say that I liked the recommendation, check to see if you can piggyback on the small amount of cases that you have on the mental health over there in Glendale, and let us know what we can do on that. But with that, I appreciate all the effort that you're doing. I appreciate the hard work that both of you are doing to get this stuff done, and just continue on that with Pat, okay? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, refunding strategy for fiscal year 2026 budget. Jared is up, Finance Director. You got the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. We are here tonight to discuss a strategy of dedicating one-time funds to paying off some debt and thereby freeing up some ongoing sources for other purposes in the 26 budget. And we're really looking for a discussion with council on the interest in incorporating that into the development of the 26 budget. We'll go through the presentation anyways. So one of the reasons why we're having this conversation is during the 2025 budget, we had about $5 million of one-time items that were actually requested for ongoing purposes. So we had maintenance of right-of-way and other property maintenance. We had a transit program that we've talked about that also is being funded with one time that needs to be transitioned over to ongoing sources. Then we had another $300,000 of other minor items, about $5 million in total. That doesn't include any new ongoing requests we have for this year. The other thing we're taking a close look at is departments may be requesting items as one time that are actually ongoing. So this number is just those items that were requested as ongoing that were funded as one time. The reason why this is important is because we have financial policies that are adopted each year, and the number one budget policy is that ongoing operating costs should be supported by ongoing stable revenue sources, which is a little bit opposite of what we just saw on the last slide. What we're going to focus on is looking at debt service payments that we make each year. Total for the 25 budget is about $57 million. We back these payments with ongoing sources. The chart you see in front of us, we've got general obligation bonds, about $22 million, utility, about 11, and special districts, $13 million of annual payments. Those all have dedicated funding sources. So general obligation bonds and special districts have property taxes that are dedicated for that purpose. Utility revenue comes from water and wastewater. But we have about $10 million in debt that is supported with general fund. And there's 4 debt issuances, and we'll go through each one of those. All of them are ballpark related. And the last payment is currently scheduled for 2032. This chart shows you the combination of those 4 debt issuances by year and how much of ongoing sources we are dedicating for those purposes. So about $10 million a year in the current fiscal year of 25, 26, and 27. In 27, the 2017 and the 2021 debt will expire. We will be at the end of those debt service schedules, so you'll see that it drops down to about $9.2 million. However, the 2016 A and B continue through the end of through 2031, and then 2016 A is in 2032. Now, the key thing about 2016 A and 2016 B is that they are callable in fiscal year 2017 or 2027. And callable means that we can essentially advance refund those and avoid any interest costs if we were to call those in 2027. So it's a financing mechanism that allows us to avoid future interest, but also it allows us to do this without really any or much administrative work to get those that debt paid off.
What's the total of those callables?
The total of the callable is $37 million.
Okay,
But we're going to go through,
Okay.
let's go through each one of them.
okay.
So broke this down into 2 different categories. There's those that expire inside our 5-year forecast. So you have the Series 2017. It's about $1.3 million per year. It ends in fiscal year 27. Now, this actually was issued on behalf of the Guardians for them to do some improvements back in 2017. They reimburse us the $1.3 million from their annual spring training revenues. So we're really recommending no modifications because that won't have an impact on what we're doing here. Also expiring within the 5-year forecast, you have the Series 2021. This was originally issued in 2011. We refunded it in 2021 so we could get a better interest rate, but it was for ballpark infrastructure, previous ballpark infrastructure, even though it has a 2021 year on it. It is $4.9 million a year in fiscal years 26 and 27. We could set aside $9.8 million of one time and free up about $4.9 million a year in fiscal years 26 and 27. The reason why this doesn't free up $4.9 million a year in the future forever is because you saw we changed in 2028. You saw how, I'll go back to that slide real quick. In 2028, we actually changed the amount we're paying on the 2016 A and B. The timing of it, we set those up so we'd have about $9 million of debt service each year. So by setting aside $9.8 million, we're just freeing it up in the next 2 years. We'll have a slide a little bit later that'll break that down a little bit more for us. Also, going to the callable items within the 5-year forecast, we'll start with 2016B. It's about $2.6 to $3 million per year, and it ends in fiscal year 2031. It's callable in fiscal year 2027. As a part of last year's CIP, we had a project that we needed to fund as part of the strategic plan action item for phase 2 of the GRC. And as a part of that funding, we looked to set aside $13 million to call this debt and then issue additional debt to then build the GRC. So we have already incorporated this as part of our plan with the CIP in fiscal year 2027. So not really what we're talking about tonight. It's the same type of mechanism, but it won't free up any ongoing sources for us going forward.
You want a question now?
So the callable ones, so what's the rate now? What do we think the rate's going to be? Is it'll be favorable, you think?
It,
Interest rates should come down.
as, when we put the CIP plan together, because we knew it was, we were, at that point, that was 3 fiscal years away when we put
Yeah.
that plan together. It wasn't, we weren't looking at that interest rate so much, but as we're getting closer, we will make that decision of whether to call
Extend
or,
to get
correct.
new debt at the same time.
Correct,
Yeah.
because as of right now, that interest rate's a lot better than what we would get on the market today.
Yeah.
But when we put that plan together, the 5-year CIP plan, it was essentially a marker that we put out in fiscal year 3, the 3rd fiscal year of that plan, that this is something that we need to do. But at this point, we haven't gotten to the point of doing an interest rate analysis or
Yeah.
anything like
I
that,
mean,
but.
I think we're thinking at least 4 downs next year for interest rates, so I don't know what that'll get us to yet, quarter points or half points, but we'll see, so. We'll see how
And-
that translates over to the bonds.
And this would be in fiscal year 2027 or beyond, so we're,
Yeah,
we're
hopefully
we're still 2.5 years away from that point, so.
Hopefully we keep getting lower. All right. Just curious. I'm sure you do the analysis. I just want to bring it up. Thank you.
The strategy, if I understand it, is not to refinance, and that's up for council's discussion on here. The strategy would be as callables, pay them off, and then determine whether that payment of 30 million, 40 million, whatever that number is, by using one-time money to pay that off, what do you give up that you're going to use that 40 million for? And then by paying it off, that ongoing, how much ongoing you free up that you're not going to be paying for debt service. In a capsule, that's what you're looking at, basically, okay? So as you kind of go through there, the question is timing, because not all of them are callable this year, next year, et cetera, is how that schedules out on the ones you even have the option to call the bonds. So,
Let me go through the 2016A, and then I have a schedule after that that
Okay.
we can look through. So the 2016A, that's the bond that currently we're paying about $1.6 million a year, but that's going to jump up to $6.2 million a year in fiscal year '28. It is callable in '27. We could set aside one time to call those funds. It's $27.5 million, which would free up $6.1 million of ongoing in fiscal years '28 through '32. So the combination of potentially setting aside funds for the 2021 and setting aside funds for the 2016A would free up between $5 and $6 million a year in ongoing. This chart here lays out, here's the amounts that we would need to set aside of one-time sources, so $37 million total. And then these are the amounts that it would free up on an annual basis, about $5 million going to 6.1 and holding there for through 2032, and really, in theory, forever at that point. This is kind of like, this is one plan. There's many strategies we could use, and somewhere in between this, we could change the timing if we needed to, but this would be a plan that would maximize the most that we could get from ongoing. However, there are other strategies that we could use somewhere in between there. There's also strategies as far as setting aside funds. So the 2021, it's not callable, but if we just reserve that in our budget of $9.8 million, we also could talk to our financial advisors about defeasing the debt, which is a more technical way of doing it. It also could help us maybe avoid some interest costs by doing that. However, there's a cost to defease debt. Also, that would lock us in. If we were to do a reservation of funds, then we could change our plan if we needed to, or if things changed as well.
so staying on that particular slide there, for fiscal '26 and '27, you would need $37 million of one-time money that we have set aside to do that in those 2 fiscal years. So the question is since we're losing $5 to $6 million of sales tax for our, our residential rental that went away, we got to figure out a way to replace it, strategy-wise, for the council. And this is one way to go about it, to free up some of that money, as opposed to raising taxes, but the other question is what do you give up with the $37 million? So that's something council would have to look at to see what has to be. But I like the fact that if we can do this without totally, and this is just my 2 cents worth, if we can totally do it without impacting our CIP, and fortunately, our one-time money seems to be pretty well with our construction and everything that kind of goes on. It may be a way to offset possibly tax increases or anything along that by freeing up this money now that can be used to fill that gap. So we just got to know it's 9 million in 26, 27 and 27 to get us a total of 37. So am I on the right track here?
Correct.
Okay.
And actually, one of the things that we were going to say is that, hey, the impact is not yet known, just as you mentioned, Mayor.
Well, I know
So
it's
the
not
budget,
known yet.
the budget process is underway right now, so we'll have a better idea of how it's going to affect the CIP or other one-time items as we develop that budget. So that's really why we're looking for your interest in us incorporating this into the budget, whether we end up reserving $37 million or something different, again, so that we can kind of balance what's going on in the CIP versus what we're doing on the ongoing side and operations.
I'm going to open up for discussion, but I think the strategy, this is my 2 cents worth, strategy-wise, I like the approach. I know Bill brought that to me a while back. Anytime, from my perspective, you can take one-time money to try to free up some ongoing, because the policy we have now in which we're using one-time money, and, with a rewrite, et cetera, we shouldn't be doing that. That means it's violation of our policy. So we got to figure out a way. Another option is to raise taxes, but I don't think there's any interest in that if we don't have to. So I like this concept, just don't know what the 37 million it needs. So with that, who wants to, well, we'll start there and then we'll go to Bill.
No, I think this is a great idea, so thank you for bringing it to us and doing the research on it. But yeah, we have to look at what we're giving up for 37 million and what the pacing is going to be and what the schedule is going to be like. So I'm on board in theory. I think it's a great idea if we reduce our debt and have ongoing money, which is great because then we can do a lot more ongoing things with it. I think it's a great idea. So yeah, but just understand I line up the CIP along with it to make sure we're not giving up something. So, but I think you talked about in our finance meeting that we're looking okay for this next fiscal year potentially too.
Correct.
So, but looks right now tentatively. So we'll see how that works out. But if we can use one-time money, I think it's be a great idea to use it for that. So, yeah, thank you.
Bill?
Okay, so back in October, I had asked for the breakdown of what are we spending ongoing money for the debt service. And I also asked about the fund balance average every year, which is essentially the amount of money that we have left over in our budget year after year. We don't reprogram that as one time. We use that money as one time. I'm going to say the leftover. The leftover of unassigned fund balance in 2019 was 16.3, in 2020 it was 17.5, in 21 it was 29.1, in 22 it was 26 million, in 2023 it was 35 million. So at the end of every fiscal year, we end up with a fairly significant amount of money that we could theoretically almost cover this 37 million in one fell swoop. If not, it'll be at least the 2 fiscal years to pull that off. We also currently have, the way I'm reading the report that we got on Friday, a contingency of unforeseen expenditures that sits at about 25.4 million right now. Am I reading that chart correctly?
Yeah.
Okay. So we currently have in our quote-unquote savings account $25 million. So I guess I'm just trying to caution let's not get sticker shocked by 37.4, that there are significant revenue sources available for us to use to pay this amount of money without it quote unquote costing us anything else down the road. Because if I've been paying attention to you, Jared, over the last few years, you don't use that money to pay for or to program CIP.
No, that's,
Correct.
Right. So whatever we have left over at the end of the year is brand new one-time money, right?
Correct.
Okay. So when we're trying to make a decision, we're not making a decision tonight other than to tell them, please proceed and do the math, the rest of the math on this. What do we save in interest by paying all of these off early? Did you do that calculation?
So in total, we save about $7 million. However, it's $4 million for the 2016A because we already planned on doing the 2016B, so it's about $4 million in interest.
Okay, so we have a savings in addition to this going forward. So that's like number 3. But so number 4 with that is the most important thing, and I think what started this whole conversation was I went, kind of going back over time and whatnot, and in 2011, when we started, the conversation every year was, holy smokes, we spend a lot of ongoing money to pay for one-time debt, which is the debt service for the ballpark. Generally, that's paid with secondary property tax, but we didn't have the capacity to do that, et cetera. So we just, year after year after year, have been spending a lot of that money that should have been going for normal operational stuff. So now we're to the end of this, so we're coming to the last 5 years or 7 years. Now we can actually treat this as one-time debt, which I think is to our advantage. The question about, what are we not going to spend our money on? We're either not spending $6.1 million a year for operational things, or we're not spending $37 million one time. And I think we all know that the ongoing 6.1 per year is probably more important and probably provides us the bigger bang than a one-time shot of $37 million. Given the fact that over the last several years, we have not spent all of the one-time money that we've had. So, when you make that decision kind of going forward, I think we've really got to look at what are we doing. And we are constantly we've got a couple of agenda items tonight. We're going to have an e-session to talk about a real estate deal that we're talking about. We never ask where that money's coming from. So here we've got an opportunity to know exactly where this money is coming from and exactly the benefit to it. I would just encourage the future council to look at that and say, this is really the best solution forward. And the kind of note that I made was, despite the implication of not knowing the impact of the one-time projects, we will always have something that's not happening. We're either not funding an ongoing or we're not going to fund a one-time. So it's probably better to slow down the one-time spending than it is to slow down the ongoing spending. I think that's just, do you build a pool and live on rice and beans, or do you eat a little protein and maybe not build a pool this year and wait a year or two, the way we would do it at home? So I'm thrilled that the numbers worked out. I would, if you're asking my opinion tonight is we need to move forward, let these guys do their math and figure it all out. Because I'm sure as you'll be sitting here in a few months, having an additional $6 million or $5 million of ongoing money is going to make your future decision-making a lot easier, especially when you're trying to decide, are we cutting something? Are we raising revenue? How are we doing it? This solves a couple of those problems without too big of an impact. Thanks.
Oh, Sherry, then you. Sherry?
Thank you very much for bringing this forward. I think it's a really good and innovative idea to kind of get ahead of some of the debt. Could you show me the chart that you had them all? Because when Bill was explaining that, oh, the next one, that one. So we would come up with the 9.9 million for 26 and the 27.4 million for 27, right? And then our savings for those years are almost 5 million and 6 million, right? So in my attorney math way to look at it, you've got 10 million, but you're spending 5 million. I mean, it seems like that's a good deal, because then you got those 6 million. I think that's overall a good use of our money, and I think that fits right in, as the mayor was saying, with what we could lose. So I think with the sales, rental sales tax. So I think this is a really good way to kind of backfill, and I say, I agree with Bill. I think it's, go do the math, make sure it works out, that everything, you know, the bonds are all going to work out and everything. I think it's a great idea, so thank you.
Councilmember Gillis?
I agree with Sherry and Bill and the mayor. And I also will go one step further because these numbers are not in my vocabulary because I'm not a math major. But I'm going to say that I appreciate Bill for educating me on this because this was kind of important. And I have a problem with spending interest money, you know, having this much money going out and then having all that interest going out as well when we don't have to. I think that that's important because we are watching this money for the people of the city. So, and I'm not for raising taxes. So anything we can do not to raise taxes, I think that's a very good thing. So I'm all for this. I think this is the right way to go, 100%.
Vice Mayor?
I also want to commend our fellow councilmember Bill for digging into this and then proposing it, and for you, Jared, to do the math. And you had mentioned initially that there's a lot of different ways you could go, but this is what you had recommended. So is this, as our CFO, is this your recommended plan?
So as the CFO, I have to support the budget process, and I understand that as a part of the budget process, we use that to really balance all of our needs at one time. I think this is a great financial move. Without having all of the requests in front of me for the budget,
Right.
I have to diplomatically say I would
Okay.
like the budget process to carry on so that we can weigh all this against any other item that may come up. But financially, this is a pretty good idea.
Great. And then this gets us aligned with our own financial policy of using ongoing money for ongoing. So, very
That's
good.
correct.
Thank you. Great idea.
Councilmember Campbell?
Thank you, Jared. So this money, is this excess money that Bill brought up, the 16.3, 17.5, et cetera, is that in addition to our rainy day fund?
Yes, that is
Then we have
correct.
an awful lot of money
So
sitting around.
to kind of steal my own thunder, because later tonight we'll be
Oh,
doing a
sorry.
presentation on the financial statements for 2024. We have $29.9 million of unassigned fund balance, which means
Awesome.
we don't have that dedicated for any other purpose.
Okay, good. I don't want to do anything to jeopardize the conservative approach that we have always had since I have been on council. I would rather be very conservative and had an awful lot of money left over and then figure out how to spend it than budget us right down to the very penny that we have. Because we never know if we're going to need a new roof. We never know what's going to happen to us. And so we've got to be able to have some funds. You know, when we went through the downturn, we weathered it absolutely amazingly because we had our rainy day fund, and a lot of cities didn't. So I appreciate you being so conservative. You're making us more conservative anyway. And I'm anxious to see how many budget requests come up and what we actually fund and what we don't fund. That will be interesting. And I'm assuming that the word will get out to the departments that we're going to be extremely conservative this year. So they won't be asking for a trip to Disneyland and things like that.
That is correct.
Huh? Okay, thank you, Jared.
You're good?
I like it. Thank you.
You know, I think it's, you know, I like the concept when you put all this together. I think it's real important as we go forward, though, as you look at all these pieces that we did here. We got to get back to, we've got the We Ride, we've got other things that are using one-time money that they shouldn't be using one-time money. So we got to make sure we get back to our fiscal conservative policies where it's ongoing for ongoing expenses. And I'm with the other councilman. I don't want to raise taxes either. But we got to figure out a way to get our, get our policies back in line with ongoing expenses. So anything we can do to wrangle this is really good. And I appreciate the effort you put in there. And thanks, Bill. And thanks, council, for saying, everybody seems to be on the same page here. So with that, thank you.
Thank
Okay?
you very much, Jared.
How much time do we need to get ready to go over?
10 minutes or so?
We have to take down all the microphones because you guys are from back on this side. So
15 minutes?
15 minutes to start over there? Okay. All right. With that, this one's done. Yeah, we got to go back over on the other.